Okay, we're official.
Algebra fraction.
Okay. So today is this? What is it? The 19th?
It's the 19th.
All right. So in your notes, you should have the date. Guys, the video's running. Guys, the video's running. So yesterday we took. Yes.
Can I get my book?
Yes. Go ahead. Yesterday we talked about solving equations with fractions. In general, it was pretty easy. Wouldn't you guys agree with me?
Yeah.
If I had not taught you that trick though, it would not have been that easy, right? It would have been significantly harder. I mean, it would have been doable, but it would have been just harder. By knowing that there is a way to get rid of all the fractions in one move, that's awesome, okay? Now, sometimes though, yesterday we were only talking about things with equations that had the same denominator. Yes?
Would you have to find the common denominator and then multiply all the denominators by that number, and then you get the common denominator, and then you can use the steps?
Correct. Yeah, that would totally work. So, but let's just look at a problem. Before I actually show that though, that's pretty perceptive. But before I show that, I'm going to show you doing it in 2 steps. All right? Just so that you can see. Let's say I gave you 2 fifths x plus 1/4 equals, I don't know, equals
5/7.
we'll say 6, whatever, doesn't matter what we do. Okay? So we know how to get rid of a fraction by multiplying everything by that denominator. Am I right? So I could, what I'm going to show you right now is not the way I would solve it, okay? So just be aware of that. If you write it in your notes, maybe put in here, not the fastest way. Not fastest way. But it's okay. Not fastest way. But this is an okay way. If you can't remember how to do it, this is a way you can always solve these. If I want to get rid of this fraction, 2 fifths, I multiply everything by its denominator, by 5. So let's do it. I'm going to multiply times 5. I'm going to multiply this times 5. And I'm going to multiply this times 5. Right? You agree with me? So that gives me, these 5's cross out. That gives me 2x plus, these don't cross out, do they? That gives me 5/4. Do you agree with me? Equals 6 times 5 is 30, right? Okay. Bummer, I still have a fraction. We'll get there. I know what you're thinking, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Don't worry, John.
But what did we do? We had different denominators in these fractions, right?
Yeah.
So all I did was multiply by the denominator of one of the fractions. That got rid of that fraction, but it did not even slightly get rid of the second fraction. So now what could I multiply everything by?
4.
Yeah, okay. So 4. So I'm going to multiply this times 4, and this times 4, and this times 4. So that gives me 8x is equal to, now the 4's cross out. I have 5, what am I not equals, plus 5 equals 120.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'm going to subtract 5, and that gives me 8x is equal to 115. And I'm going to divide by 8, I get x is equal to 115 divided by 8, whatever the heck that is, right? So, so that worked it wasn't hard, right? It was pretty easy. I just multiplied everything by 5 first, got my answer, multiplied everything by 4 second, got my answer. Now, could I have done it more quickly? Could I have done this? I did this in 2 steps. What did I actually multiply? By the time it was over, what did I multiply this equation by?
4.
I multiplied it times 4, but I also multiplied it times 5. So I actually multiplied this equation. Technically, by the time I was done, I multiplied it times 20. You guys agree with me?
No, yeah, that's what I was thinking, but it's because you
That would
multiply
work.
5 times.
Because 5 doesn't go into 9, right? and 4 doesn't go into 9. So that wouldn't get rid of your denominator, right? It has to be a multiple of 5 and a multiple of 4. You guys remember what multiples are?
Yeah.
Multiple of 4 would be, anything that 4 goes into. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 is a multiple of 4. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 is a multiple of 4. 4 times 5, 20 is a multiple of 4. So whatever you multiply it by has to be a multiple at least of one of the fractions, of one of the denominators, right? But since we multiplied this by 20, after, by the time we were done, we had multiplied it by 20. You guys all agree with that? All right, let's do it. Let's do it again. We've got 2/5 x plus 1/4 equals 6, right? And that was what? Okay, let's do it. Let's multiply it times 20. So I'm going to put times 20 times 20 times 20. Now, this is where we have to reduce upstairs and downstairs with fractions. I see 5, I know, goes into 20, right?
Yeah.
5 goes into 5 once. 5 goes into 20 4 times. So look what I have now. 2 times 4 is 8x.
Ooh.
Over 1, but I don't have to write over 1. Anything over 1, just you can eliminate the denominator, right?
Yeah.
Plus, now look, 4 goes into 4 once, and 4 goes into 25 times. So 5 times 1 is 5. Equals 6 times 20 is 120. Right? You with me?
Yeah.
And now I subtract. Now look where I'm at. Right? This I had to multiply once times this and once times 5 and once times 4, and that got me this. By multiplying by 20 right away, I skipped this step. It's not that big a deal though. If you don't like if you're having trouble figuring out what is the number to multiply by, then just go ahead and do it this way, right? Does that make sense? It's not that big of a difference. It's just this saves one step.
And then we subtract both sides by 5. I mean,
Right, and so then you subtract by 5, and then the rest of it's going to be the same. 8x is equal to 115, and then divide by 8, x is equal to 115 divided by 8, whatever that is.
You're not actually trying to find, you're not finding a common denominator. You're just finding something that the denominator.
Technically, you are finding a common denominator, but you're not making the common denominator. Does that make sense? You're multiplying by the common denominator, right? So really, that's great to see. So let's see. I'm going to erase this because I need the space. So yeah. So when the denominators are different, right? Denominators are different, right? When they're different, you find the lowest common denominator. Do you know that LCD? Is that okay if I just do that? You guys know that term, that abbreviation? The lowest common denominator. It doesn't have to be the lowest. It could just be a common denominator. But the lowest just gives you smaller numbers, right? Lowest common denominator to multiply each term by that lowest common denominator, right? And that will solve the problem. Yes, Daisy.
I noticed something about the problem that we just did.
What's that?
Couldn't you find the number that you multiply both fractions by multiplying the two denominators? Because technically you'd get the same thing, just 5 times 4 is 20. Yeah, but sometimes it's not going to be the
Sometimes it won't be the smallest common denominator, but that would always work, basically. That would always work. It just means you might have a little more math to do because you're multiplying times a bigger number. We'll do one like that. Yes, question.
LCDs are all over the room. Liquid crystal displays.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, you don't even have to look at the problem. You just look around the room, right? Yeah, go ahead.
are you expecting us to do the faster way for most of these? Or
I'm okay with either way. to be honest with you. But the faster way, if it's comfortable for you, do the faster way. If it's not, then do the other way. It's totally fine. You get the right answer either way, right?
Yeah.
Getting a guy to the moon just matters, it matters that you get the right answer. Doesn't matter that one guy goes a little faster and does a shortcut and one guy doesn't, right? It's only one extra step. One extra step in math does not take that much time.
Gardner, shortcuts are scary.
But let's try a couple more. Let's say I gave you,
Why is not faster way still up there?
okay. All right, so number 2. What if I said,
What do you mean laughing?
okay, what if I said that?
Play like a ninja, like ninja toes.
3/4 x, okay guys, shh. 3/4 x plus 1/6 equals 2. What would you do, Jaden?
You'd multiply the numerator by 28.
Now, wait, where are you getting 28? So this is what I'm thinking you're doing. You're saying 4 times 6 is 24, right? So that totally works. That is not the lowest common denominator. 12 is the lowest common denominator, right? So this is sort of answering, I think it was Basie's question that Jan was also answering, that sometimes if you multiply the denominators times each other, Basie, do you see that? You would get 24. And so you could multiply everything times 24, but then you're dealing with pretty big numbers. But it's totally okay. Let's do it. I don't care. Let's do it. Times 24. Times 24. Times 24. Right? So 4 goes into 4 once. 4 goes into 24 6 times, right? So that gives me 18x. Plus 6 goes into 6 once. 6 goes into 24 4 times. 4 times 1 is 4. Equals 2 times 24 is 48. Right? You with me? Minus 4, 18x is equal to 44, right? Divide by 18, so x is equal to 22 over 9, right? 44 over 18, I divided top and bottom by 2. I just reduced it, right? Right? Now, had I used this idea of the lowest common denominator, it really wouldn't have been that different. Right? Right? Yeah, let's try it. So if we have 3/4 x plus 1/6 equals 2, and let's say we decided, the lowest common denominator is 12. So times 12, times 12, times 12. So 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 12 3 times, right? 3 times 3 is 9x. Plus 6 goes into 6 once, 6 goes into 12 twice, plus 2 is equal to 24. I'm going to subtract 2. 9x is equal to 22. Guys, shh, James. Divide by 9, x is equal to 22/9. Now tell me the difference. What do you notice on the difference? Was this a lot harder?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. So it's totally fine. If you don't know what the lowest common denominator is, just go ahead and multiply the two denominators together. That's totally fine. It doesn't have to be the lowest common denominator. It just has to be a common denominator, right? What's the difference? What else other differences you notice, Luke?
Well, they're just bigger.
So yeah, suddenly I have 18x plus 4 equals 48. Here I have 9x plus 2 equals 24. Any other differences? Anybody else notice something? Yes, Rosemary.
It was just a lot faster.
It was a little faster. It was a little faster. Did I notice what I would have gotten here? X is equal to 44 over 18, and then I had to reduce it to 22 over 9. Look what happened. I didn't have to reduce this. It was already in reduced form, right? So there's just a little bit of advantage to using the lowest common denominator. Does that make sense? Fist of 5, you guys get it? Okay. Okay, any questions? Are there, okay, you put your hands down and then raise them if you have questions. Basic.
So on the homework tonight, is it okay if we just say whatever 22 divided by 9 is, or do we have to actually simplify it into a mixed number?
Oh yeah, no, you could just leave it as 22 over 9.
Because I did get 2 and 4 9s, but I was wondering if I even need to do that.
You don't even need to do that. As long as you know how to do it, that's fine. But you can do it, but you don't have to. I don't bother with it. And the reason why in algebra, very often it's actually more valuable to have the fraction, even in improper form, than it is to have the mixed number. As we start moving into graphing and slopes on a graph, it's not helpful a lot of times to have it as a mixed number. You need the slope to be a rise over a run, which is a fraction. Yes?
Couldn't you convert that to a mixed number, and then with that
You can.
be
If
the
you,
answer?
yeah, you can, but I would just leave it like this. But if you want to, sure. It goes in 2 times, that'd be 18, and 4 ninths, right?
Yeah.
You can do that, it's totally fine. But my point is, you don't have to. This is an acceptable answer,
Yay.
right? So you don't have to go to the next step. You can just leave it as an improper fraction. Try to think if there's any other examples that I might want to go over.
No.
Can we please work on the homework?
Yeah, let me just think if there's any others. All right, what if I did this? Let's do one last one. 3. Okay, guys. So guys, this is a video, and I need it quiet. Does she have your pencil? Thank you. Okay. So here, what if I gave you this? Let's see, what if I gave you...
Yes, Daniel.
I have an idea. What if I gave you 1/2 x plus 2/3 equals 4/6?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. That looks scary, doesn't it? Do we have same denominators? No. Do we have, how many different denominators do we have?
3.
3. What would be my lowest common denominator? In other words, this is the easiest way to find it. Okay, basically, you listening? The easiest way to find the lowest common denominator, this isn't taught very often, is you take the biggest number. Does this go into the biggest number?
Yeah.
Does this go into the biggest number?
Yeah.
Oh, then I just multiply by the biggest number.
But what if they don't?
Okay, if they don't, let's say, I'll just give it, I'm gonna go back to this, so you don't have to write anything, you don't have to change anything. What if I did this? Well, what if I did,
5.
5.
sure, okay, that's fine. We'll do 5. All right, so this is what I do. So you guys listening? Listen for a second. In order to find the lowest common denominator, the easiest way to do it is to take the biggest number. And does 2 go into 5?
No.
No. Therefore, I'm going to double 5. 10. Does 2 go into 10?
Yes.
Yes. Does 3 go into 10?
No.
No. So I'm going to triple 5. 15. Does 2 go into 15?
No.
No. Okay, I'm going to quadruple 5. 5 times 4 is 20. Does 2 go into 20?
Yeah.
Does 3 go into 20?
No.
Okay, so 25. No. 30.
Yeah.
30 is my my lowest common denominator. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to find it when you have a lot of different ones. Okay, but we said this one was 6, right? That was what we had
Yeah.
originally.
Thanks
So,
for telling us that, though.
We're going to multiply everything times 6, right? And that should get rid of our fraction. Let's try it. Times 6, times 6, times 6. All right, those 6's cross out.
Oh, yeah.
let's see, 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 6 3 times, so that's 3x, plus 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 6 twice, 2 times 2 is 4, equals 4. Ah, that's interesting. Can anybody, just look at that, 3x plus 4 equals 4. Without solving it, what do we know x has to be?
3x.
We're going to solve it, but what does x have to be?
2/3 x.
Still.
That has to be 0.
What do you see, Lucas?
0.
Why 0?
Because if you subtract 4 from each side, the x equals 0, because 0 divided
Right.
by 3 is...
4 equals 4, right?
Yeah.
So if this is actually anything other than 0, this would not be an equation. Does that make sense? It wouldn't. It would be false. So right. So let's just subtract. We'll subtract 4. We've got 3x equals 0. Divide by 3. Do friends let people divide numbers into 0?
No.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Friends never let friends divide by 0, right? You can divide into 0, but you can't divide by 0. Denominator cannot be 0. Numerator can be 0. X is equal to 0. Right?
So we were right.
You were right. Good job.
I was right.
All right, fist to 5. Are you guys understanding this pretty well? Does that
Totally.
make sense to you?
You're like,
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to end the lecture, and I'll just walk around and help you guys.